All right, so what I am doing right now is I'm getting ready to coat my rod. So I got to make sure that that my rod is perfectly aligned, and I did align it yesterday really quick. One thing you don't want to do now, my guides, I put the guides on really nice. You should be able to move your guides. If you can't move your guides, that means it's wrapped too tight. And I'm going to tell you, it will snap your rod. Um, so you want to make sure that when you're wrapping your guides that it is not on tight. So I'm barely touching it. I'm just a couple pressures, like just a mild pressure like so, is moving my guides. Um, so what I'm doing, I should just be able to press on that and it should be able to move. When my kid did his rod, he did an awesome job. The coating was good. The wrapping was good. His epoxy work was good. Everything came out, but the only thing he did wrong was he wrapped the guides too tight, and it ended up snapping that rod. And yeah, and I asked him, did he wrap the guides too tight? And he goes, I think I did. He goes, was it hard to move? He goes, yeah, it was really hard to move the guides. And yeah, so that was the key of breaking. You're putting pressure on your blank, and so this part here, it's a little time consuming. The more you do, the faster you get at it, and so that's what I'm doing right now, making sure I got my guides in the right spot. It's pretty, and this blank here is just it has such a slight, very slight bend to the right, and it doesn't matter any rod, it's going to have some kind of slight bend to it. It doesn't defect the rod on that. That's not what defects the blank. There's other things that the manufacturers do that make these rods defective. Now, before I buy a rod, I always test my rods out at the store, and it has to go through this little mild, it goes through a mild test. It's not the full-on test, but it's just a mild test. And what I do is I test for brittleness of the blank, because you can buy a rod and you can cast with it, but as soon as it does a little, if you just, so let me see here. Like I always start up by the tip area, and this is what I do. If you can see here, this is what I do, and that's what I do, and I add a little pressure with my thumb. Now I've bought rods, and I do this little test, and right there, that should have broke. And then normally a brittle blank is going to snap on light pressure, and it will snap until it gets to an area that was wrapped properly before baking. And it's usually just too loose, and it ends up that makes that blank brittle when it goes through the oven. It's not wrapped right. There's a plastic shrink wrap that goes around the whole rod, and that's how you get that snakeskin belly. They sand that down, and then they epoxy the crap out of it for more strength. And but so what I've noticed, even though that the rod has been coated 2-3 times and got this nice finish on it, if it's brittle, it's brittle. Now, if it's brittle down here at the fat ends, you're never going to snap it. You can't use this technique to see if it will snap. Yeah, so that's what I'm doing right now. I'm aligning my rods. So I start from the tip top, then I go to the next, to the tip. the next guide to the tip, and so on and so forth, and kind of just work my way down. And what I'm looking for is the space in between. I'm looking at the eye, and when I'm looking at the eye, there's space between the two guides, and so I just want all the spaces to match up all the way up to the tip top, and so it's constantly looking and moving, and that is looking really fabulous. So I got this down. Now I just need to grab my butt section here, and I just hit that guide. So I gotta look at that again. I got a rail seat on. I got my reel on this rod, and this here is looking phenomenal. The spacing is really good, and then I'm gonna get this reel off here, and I'm gonna slowly work this here, make sure my hook keeper's on there pretty decent too. And the hook keeper needs to move over just slightly, not too much, to get right center here. I need to turn the light on. Okay, that's a lot better. I can see here. All right, that hook keeper is right dead center, going up the rod, and those two guides are looking really good. All right, so that's looking good. I'm gonna drop the tip, raise it back up again, and that is looking almost dead center. And a lot of the issues come when you're wrapping your guides. If you don't keep everything, the wrap nice and tight, especially on under wrapping, when you put the guide on, it will sink into, the thread will sink in if you have any gaps, so that has to stay pretty tight. And you're going to have a lot of issues trying to close that gap because it's underneath the under wrap. So what I mean is, like, when I come over the guide and go onto the back side of this, guide, the thread will sink in, and you cannot get that gap out. So you definitely gotta, if you do under wraps, you don't have to do under wraps. I only did the under wraps just because this was epoxied. So I'm just giving it a little more protection. These guys have already been filed down. I did very minimal filing on it. I just got rid of that steeper chamfer that was on there. It was something like that. Then I ended up gradually getting it to making it a little slighter. So I had to bring it back another 1/8 of an inch. But it filed down fairly easily, and it wrapped really nice. I did have one issue on the spacing. I kept seeing the bottom of my guide foot, and it was, I believe, on this bottom guide or this guide. I don't see it anymore. I pushed everything down. Okay, there it is. So the more I move this around, it shows. So I got to constantly, every time I mess with this, I use the back of my fingernail and I kind of just push everything down, and then that's all it takes to get rid of that thread gap. So now I am working on the 5th guide. So I'm putting a lot of time on lining these guides out. So I'm double checking, triple checking, quadruple checking, and I look back at the tip again. Everything, look back down. It looks really nice. So now the only thing I have to do now is the next step is any hairs sticking off the threads. I gotta get that down. So this is what I use, is this here. And all you do, there's a wick on there and everything. You fill this up with denatured alcohol and it burns clean, and it doesn't burn as hot. And this is what I use. I just kind of, when I get it, I'll get this on a turner and everything. And then from that point on, I kind of just flame everything down. It's not secured into the wall at all. So this is going to be out here more. And I like that this has clamps on there. Now, you don't need all this fancy stuff to do this. You really don't. There's other ways to do this. I used all sorts of different things in the past. I'm going to need a piece of blank to stick into there because I do have to coat the bottom of that guide. And it looks like I will have to move this down just a tad bit so I don't hit that guide. And that is it. It'll work. It may work. And I will just have to cut this down to size. Right now it's very long here. So I got a feeling this is not going to work for me. Oh, look at that. How lucky did I get? So I got pretty lucky there. So I'm going to cut this to about here, and I will be able to put that right on there like so. Let you see what's going on there. There's my setup to turn my rods in for coating. Like I said, normally I use denatured alcohol, and I'll just turn this thing on is what I wanted to do. So let's do that, make sure it all works. Everything is going to be nice. And just turn it. Oh, and there it goes. I'll turn this one on. And it looks like it's working very well. So for it to turn, you just turn it off and turn it back on, and then it'll spin the other way. And yeah, so everything is looking really good. So far, so good. And so the first step, when I do coat this rod, there's all sorts of different glues you can use. I'm going to try something different this time. I'm going to use UV glue. I like that it stays clear. The UV light doesn't change colors on it. Most of the time I use like Flex Coat or some type of resin 2-part epoxy. And using that, you just have, there's a little more consistency. But I will be still using 3 coats. So my first coat, I'm just going to get all my threads wet. And then I'll wipe it all down. I'll let that cake up. So that's what I will be doing. And then same time, if you need to, if you're not good with your brush, make sure that you tape up all your hardware. Anything you don't want to get glue on it, make sure you down and through here you don't have to. So since I have no denatured alcohol, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try my heat gun. This is a very cool little heat gun. It gets very hot. Yep, there it went. It does work. The heat gun does work. So we are going to get ready to coat these, and I'm going to do the first coat. And my first coat is just going to consist of just getting everything wet. And that's all I'm going to do. And that is all I want to do, is just get everything wet. And right here I am going to, I
I want to go past the thread just a little bit. This here moves a little bit slower than what I'm used to. But I want it to really, I want the thread to really soak this all in too. Most definitely. I just want to go over just a little bit, make sure that gets all done. But it is a lot nicer to have regular epoxy and adding. I just don't know how this stuff works with thinner. So, but I know epoxy, you can add thinner to it. This version, this is wax face. I just definitely want to make sure that it really soaks up, because all I'm doing is just putting, just covering up the threads, and then I'll be wiping all this down. And I want to get all this excess off, as much of it as I can before I hit it with my UV light. That's all I want done, for it to secure my guide in place. Clean up anything underneath that guide foot, that's fine. And that's all you kind of want, because I just can't get inside there. I'll jack everything up. And then I come over here, this one's soaked up really well. And this is one of the good things about using epoxy, is that you're not going through all this, because you're just thinning down the epoxy. And you move a lot quicker with that than you would this stuff, is what I'm noticing. The epoxy is just much easier to work with. And I don't want to touch my guide. I'm the best not to touch the guide. And that is very thin. And that's all you want. That's all you want to do. You just want to get you want to make sure that you get your threads coated, securing your guides in place, and then you put on your second coat. I just love the clarity. I love that it doesn't change the color of the glue from the sunlight. If you use Flex Coat is awesome on darker threads, just because it doesn't show through. And that's a nice thing about that. But there are other epoxies out there that is clear. And the other thing I don't know about UV is, can I add thinner to it? I don't even know if I can add thinner to that or not. Where epoxy you can. Now if you get some glue on your hardware, that's all right. You can always clean that up. And I just wanted to sit there for a bit before I wipe it down, making sure that everything soaks. And that is that. And I gotta make sure that gotta wash this with just regular dish soap. That'll clean up your brush. So now I'm gonna wipe everything back down. I think I ended up, oh, there we go. Right there, and everything looks like it's soaked up very nicely. Now it actually went right behind the guide, and I really don't want no glue there yet, because it will build up, so I need to get that wiped up, making sure it doesn't get too far up there. So some of these is done perfectly. So that's what I'm doing now. So that was the first coat. Now I just gotta go over it with my UV light. I'm not sure where that was. There it is. And the nice thing about this thing, I just put this right over the top. There's not a whole lot of glue, so I just let it sit. I do have a big UV lamp, but we have not hooked it up right for this yet, because I wasn't too sure where to put this rod turner. This seems to be a really good spot right here. And so that's what I'm doing. And it only takes about 25 seconds for it to harden, but I'm gonna go ahead and hit that right to the end there. I'll take a touch, and that's pretty dry. We'll just go the full amount. So this here is just a one of those fingernail ones. I can't remember the numbers for this. This one here was probably about 85 bucks. It has all sorts of different, it has 10-second drying time, and that is full on blast. Just hoping I don't hit it's not hitting my guide there. I gotta check that out. So I do have a lamp over here. I'm gonna see if I can get this sucker to work for me here. That way I don't have to sit there and do this with each rod. And all I have to do is just set that right underneath. All right, there we go. So I can get 2 of them done at a time. And that would do 2 of them at a time. And I don't have to sit there and watch it. But I have another one of these lamps. It looks like I'm going to end up needing about 2-3 of them. But I'll figure that all out. But this here makes it much faster for me to get these done. That's all I'm doing. Sealing everything. That way my guides will stop moving. And the other thing is making sure that the thread is completely soaked all the way through. I'm getting a good bond. I didn't even think that I could just sit there and just do that. That way I don't have to hold it. Take a look at that. Make sure everything is nice and dry. It doesn't feel tacky at all. And then now from this point on, I can actually do another coat. My brush is still good. The glue is drying. See? It's drying. So I'm going to get ready to do the second coat. So I'm going to go and wash my brush up. Wash up my little cup. And to get ready for the second coat. Alright, so in this step what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do one at a time, get it to where I need it, and get it and harden it, and that will be that. One at a time. I'm going to coat it, harden it, move on to the next one. Alright, I'm back. I had the UV light on and I didn't realize that I had the UV light on and it was drying everything out. So it didn't get the coat very well. I was wondering why it was drying out so fast. So this is the second coat. So one thing about putting the second coat on is I still want to see thread, the texture of the thread through here. And I just want to barely go over the thread there. I got my heat gun to get any bubbles out. And that's all I'm going to be looking for. It's not done yet. Still needs one last coat. So I'm just going to hit this. So from this point on, if there's any defects, in the rod, that I'll be able to chisel it off. I will be able to chisel off any defects, any spurs, any lint that got caught onto it, and that way on the third coat it's going to look fabulous. It's going to be the bomb diggity. So I'm going to go ahead and dry this completely out now. And I will let this thing just sit the whole entire time. I'm going to put this over to the side here, shut it off. So from here, if I want to, I'm looking at this right now, and I'm looking for any spurs, and I do see one right there that I need to get cut off. So I'm going to go and grab a brand new blade. That way I can get that off of there. Alright, so this is the only time I would use a very sharp blade is when I'm cutting the thread on my wrap. It's just a little spur that's sticking up right there. So I want to get that cut off. Make sure she's flat. I still see a little bit of thread. Now there's epoxy that's on the guide, the hook keeper right up here. But I'm not too worried about that. I'll get that all cleaned up when this is all said and done. And that's when I'll start scraping all that down and making it look real nice. Going through here real quick. Taking a good look at it. And that's a done deal. Now I'm going to do my final coat on this hook keeper area, you know, and I'm really thinking here, I don't know if I want to do this. I'm kind of thinking I might want to coat this whole deal. Something I'm thinking about right now, and this is taking a while here to get this. There we go. Alright, the whole thing actually looks pretty darn good. Oh, since this is getting ready to get dried, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab this napkin and I'm going to go right up to the edge there, make sure I got this nice line. I want a nice decent line there. It looks a little wacky. I just leave it, leave it, leave it, leave it. And I do a quick wipe. And I'll take a good look at it, and that is looking really good. So I think this is the only downfall about this, is just you having to do this continuously and holding it. The only good outcome of this is that it's done today. So normally after the first coat, you can wait a few hours, but you get everything done. And then you put your second coat on, and when you put your second coat on, it's going to pretty much take you the rest of the day for it to dry. Then because you got to be able to cut all the spurs off, so it has to be perfectly dried. And then same thing with your third coat, is that you're going to have to wait another full day for you to be done. In this manner, you'll get your rod done. It's going to take a little while because of the UV and making sure that it's dry, but it seems to work very well. I'm not having an issue on it being flat. It seemed to level itself out pretty well. The bubbles were able to come out very easily. The other thing you ain't got to worry about is having resin and hardener, the smell of the epoxy. So either or, you know, the epoxy, you have more time. You have a lot more time, and you know, you're not standing here for an hour doing this. But I definitely want this rod done today. so it's going to take a little while. But I'm going to do each guide individually here. Put a second coat on it at first. That was up there, since it's like this down here, I had that hook keeper and I got to get underneath the hook keeper, so it was a little bit of a hassle. And so I wanted to complete that 100%. And so this one here, I am doing, let's see here, so it's about about 3 minutes of the UV to make sure that it's fully dry. And I might just go another 90 seconds after this for the full dry. And that way I can get the butt section off of this rack here. So a little time consuming that way. Yep, that's a full cure. It's done. That is a done deal. I'm just bringing this over here so you guys can see me coat this here. So now I'm on over here, check my glue, and it did dry out, but it didn't dry out like the last time. Yes, I am. All right, working on the next guide. So I am just looking to put a second coat on this, and that is it. I want to still be able to see the thread on this second coat. Didn't use enough glue there. I just need to get a little more confidence in this UV glue. And you do definitely want to go over that thread, past the thread, like a 1/16 of an inch or less. And that way, if that edge of that, anything hits that edge of that thread, it's not going to start deteriorating the thread or the epoxy. Now the hardest thing about it is going to be this undercoat. I got to get it underneath that foot right there on the front. That's going to be a little difficult to do. And the other thing is getting it past, there we go. That's what I wanted to do right there, is get past that a little bit. Get past that thread a little bit. So I am going to do the best I can to try to shoot a little bit of glue right there where I got thread is still exposed right in there. Now it's going to goop up a little bit because of, and it looked like I got everything pretty good. And so, to get a nice line all the way around, I'm going to take and I'm going to see what I need to do to shoot and make a nice line here without disrupting my guide. And I think I just got that. Awesome job. And that thing is looking good. I barely see any bubbles. If any, I see one spur. I can't tell if that's a spur or if it's a bubble. And it looks to me like it's a spur there. And I heated that up, and that's awesome. I see a droop there. So that's what that was a spur. And I'm going to get that off because all that's telling me is there's just too much glue on there. And I don't want too much glue on there right now. Taking a good look at it, everything looks awesome. I mean, that's probably a final coat look, but I will be putting another coat on that. I have one spur sticking out. That is nice about UV light,
is if you do have any imperfections, and you can cut those out, and you can just add a little flare out the sides and you never see it. If you just put a little drop on there when it's fully dried, you're gonna see that. Probably doesn't need to sit as long as what I'm putting it on for, but just to be, because it is a pretty decent amount of UV glue. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the same thing I did before. So 90 seconds, 90 seconds, and another 90 seconds. That way I know it's completely dry. I probably don't need to leave it on there that long, especially with this here. This one here dries it out and it hardens it up pretty quickly. And I do believe the more you use it out in the sun, it's just constant, it'll cure even more. So right after this one here, it's a done deal. It should be a very done deal. Then I got that one last guide to work on. The butt section's done. Then I just work on this, the tip of the rod. Ta-da! There it is. So I just want to show you here. There's still a little bit of work I need to do. I got to clean up the hook keeper there. But all in all, it came out looking really good. Show you my guides here. There's the guide. There's one of the guides there. And there's the other guide there. Clean lines. Looks very nice. So it's all done. So this part of the rod is all done. Wow. I can glue this end piece on here. That is awesome. I can't believe it's done at all. It took me a while. That is looking, tell me if that doesn't look pretty slick right there, guys. To bit to bat. There it is. And that is it right there. So my next rod that I built, I am deleting this. I don't need that. That part I don't need. But to have this, that trim, and the trim down below, that's all I really need. And when I glue these things on, I'm going to slow rotate it. Just like that. Just slow rotating it, making sure that there's glue everywhere. Glue there. And there's my press. And I will keep that press just like that. And grab my napkin. Do a very good clean there. And I'll hold and press this until it is done. And that's going to be about 5 minutes or so. So that's what I'm going to do. And the next time I come down, I will be showing you my finished gig here. This thing is done. I am complete.